Welcome to Amtgard Leadership University at Keep on the Borderlands 2016. My name is Sir Gorin from Northreach, and I am here with Weezicus, Michael, Queball, and Broton, all from Polaris, and we're going to talk today a little bit about their successful bid for Kingdom and some of the work that went into leading up to that. So I'm in a Principality that's currently in its bid year, and I'm curious about some of the things that happened with you guys in the organization of your Principality that helped you be successful in your Kingdom bid. Does anybody want to talk about that in general? Michael?
Planning. Literally, we started the plan for this 3 or 4 years ago, way before our good year. And one of the first things that I came up with, even before the idea had been fully socialized, that we were going to become a kingdom and what our timetable was and all that, was that travel costs. Gas money was going to be a thing. So I started raising money. I went to the parks in Polaris, did minor fundraisers, raised money that I planned to give back as gas money during the good year. And then the other thing that was huge is our parent kingdom put us on the clock. From the day we joined the Rising Winds, we had 2 years plus a 1-year extension that we could ask for, or we went back into the Rising Winds as parks.
Okay. I kind of want to talk about a couple of those things that you just brought up there. First, Queball, I'm going to throw this at you because you mentioned earlier that you have a fondness for logistics.
Right.
So how did your then Principality organize the travel necessary to get all the people you needed in one place at one time?
So we knew when we were going to do our good year a year before it happened. What Imhog is talking about is he set up a travel fund so we could pay every car that came. A few other things that we did was every single one of our good year events are not, every Amtgard group has 4 events a year, 2 mid-range, 2 a coronation. The other 8, we plan those a year before they even happen, so the autocrats can organize and get all their ducks in a row, make Facebook pages, get the hype up, and so we bid out every single day Goodyear event. So, and then for the clan trip, Broton organized a huge fundraiser to help people play to clan and get 40 people to clan. I'll let him talk more about that.
Yeah.
But okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all started 2 months into our Goodyear push. It dawned on me that it's going to cost a lot of money to get as many people as we wanted to clan, because the goal was to bring 50. I mean, that's a great idea. So we needed the money to do that, because an average person from the Wisconsin, Minnesota area, it costs a car about $600 to get there. So every month, between artists and just people donating things, I would auction off items to help raise money, which resulted in almost $4,000 to get people to clan.
Okay, excellent. Do you guys have any numbers off the top of your head of what it cost or what you guys spent on travel during your bid year?
So the gas fund, the way the gas fund worked is any car that showed up with 4 people got $20. And then later, because we had extra money in the fund, it was every car with 3. The amount I raised for that was about $2,500, between 2.5 and 3, so a little less than they raised for the clan trip. But all that money was returned, minus a few hundred that was left over when I got sick.
Okay.
And that went to the Polaris General Fund. But to be honest, that money got plowed back into the Goodyear events. The the Principality Treasury at that time was used to make the 8 events that John talked about that were bidded out. Those events were all free.
Okay.
A few people put extra dollars in to their event and wrote that into their bid and chose to make donation. But literally, people who traveled to those events, the only thing they paid was their travel costs. And If they brought 4 in their car, they took $20 off the top of that, which means the event basically only cost your time. And the question is, did we have to do all of that? I don't know. I don't want to find out.
Which and since we actually planned those 8 events in the middle of Polaris, it made it a lot cheaper than having one state drive to the other end of the other state. So just planning that out made it way easier on the populace of Polaris.
So just to make sure I'm understanding what you guys are saying there. So you raised money specifically for travel. You paid or reimbursed people some portion of what it cost to travel. And you had all your events be essentially located as possible. Is that how
We
that
had
works?
3 events that weren't in the core.
Okay.
Two of them were ours. The May Amtgard, Minnesota event, MAME, which is on the far western border. The Great Adventures Challenge, which is on the far eastern border. And Keep on the Borderlands, which is south.
Right.
But everything else was either Dark Shores or La Crosse, the center of our Principality.
Excellent. Weezicus, I'm going to ask you this here. What impact did that have, do you think, on your Principality's hype for becoming a kingdom in general, and their hype for Amtgard as well?
All those were amazing plans. In the past, previous incarnations prior to Polaris, I think we had our ducks in a row. We had our ambition right. We were going forward in the right direction, but we didn't quite execute it very well. So we still carried that over once Polaris was in. And once we realized that we have the plan, it's going to work, let's do this, I think it was a success before we even really got into the good year. Everybody was on board with it. I don't think I heard any sort of negative voices at all whatsoever. It was, I think we had succeeded long before we even started.
Okay, excellent. I saw all the folks you guys had at Clan. There was a lot of positive energy there. There was a lot of people there. So it seems pretty successful. I'm gonna ask each of you guys this question. You guys take turns there, because I'm assuming that all of you were involved in one way or another with becoming kingdom. Yes. So what was the biggest challenge you faced in becoming a kingdom during your bid year? I'll go ahead and start with you, Weezicus.
Biggest challenge I would say is it took a lot of sacrifice on everybody to make sure we made the monthly things. When you first think about it, it's like doing one event a month. It's not a big deal, but after you get halfway point, 3/4 point, then you realize, oh, we still got 4 more events. We still got 3 more events. 2 more left, guys. We can do this. We can do this. You tend to take a lot of energies that you thought you didn't have, but you did, and then you start kind of burning yourself out in both ends. So trying to keep yourself active and going was one of the big things, as well as trying to keep your local parks active at the same time, which I think is one of the biggest issues that you have. Because not only are you trying to push the kingdom mentality and the kingdom idea, you have to keep your local parks alive, because without the local parks, you don't have a kingdom.
Fair enough, Michael.
So, institutionally, Weez is right about the personal challenges, but institutionally, we were very lucky. We didn't have any challenges that we hadn't already planned for. Now, some of that is good planning, but a lot of that is luck. To be honest, we had a plan for getting an event snowed out. In Minnesota and Wisconsin, that can happen.
I feel you.
Global warming saved us. We did not get anything snowed out. The December event, I was the autocrat for the December event. I was worried about it for 6 months. The temperatures were in the 50s. The roads were clear. The sun was out. It was freaking gorgeous.
I heard we had a damn good
I
feast.
worried for nothing. But we were lucky. But the fact is, we did have a plan. The plan was, we had a big park. The big park had an indoor site. If one of our events fails because of weather, everybody knows. 2 weeks later, in the big park's indoor site, everybody goes. You get your payoff for your gas money. That's just the same. The big park was big enough to have half the numbers by themselves. If we'd had that emergency, the other half would have gotten in the cars and gone. I mean, there was plans. We got lucky. The challenges were not significant.
Okay.
Besides the weather, and Broton will talk more on it, my biggest concern was our actual parks itself. Again, to kind of go on what we said is we're going to something every single month, and a lot of them were Saturdays because people got to work on Monday. Half of our parks are Saturday parks, and if half the, like Crimson Circle, one of our two judges, they were notorious for bringing 30 plus people to the Goodyear events themselves. Well, there's not going to be anybody at that park that day, and doing that every month will make numbers wane and the populace die down. I was pleasantly surprised afterward when I was campaigning for office that all the parks had completely bounced back after the Goodyear push, and it wasn't really anything to worry about. But I mean, that has to do with individual park leadership.
Okay.
All right.
Broton, you got anything?
Just the only things I really noticed that were sort of challenges for us. Whereas, as like Weez commented, a little burnout near the end. It's just the month after month of traveling. But I personally thought we overcame that by supporting each other. It's like by making new friends at other parks, because when you see someone from, like, I play from Mist of the Dawn, which is Minneapolis, Minnesota. I would run into people from Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is 5.5, 6 hours away from me. I see them every month. It goes, I'm not really feeling it. It's just, I'm not feeling it this month. But then it's like, my friends are going to be there. I want to be there for my friends. And so it's just, it's always it was the travel and just knowing your friends were going to be there, which helped it. So.
Well, and this ties in very directly to something Broton said earlier. The fact that they were all in the center of the kingdom means he wasn't driving 5 hours, and neither were his friends in Green Bay. They were each driving 3 hours. And man, that makes a difference.
Sure.
Because 3 hours, you can do it in a day. You've driven 6 hours, you've played 6 hours, nice long day, no problem. But if you got to go 5 hours, it's 10 hours, suddenly it's a killer.
Okay. Great. I had a question here for, I'm going to throw this at Queball. What have you learned from your parent kingdom and what to do and what not to do?
From our parent kingdom, what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, and how did you apply that during your bid year?
It's probably better for somebody else. I didn't get into it for the IM. Weez and Broton were IM Polaris. I came in 2013, or got back active in 2013, when it was just under the Rising Winds. But other than that, Rising Winds has been the best parent kingdom I could ever imagine. They most of their monarchy came up to visit us during our time. We were taking 10 to 20 people down to the Rising Winds for all their events, working their events. We had a great back and forth. I can't think I've learned anything bad to do. What I learned, what to do, is you don't just make a principality and just say good luck. We'll see you in like 7 years. Hope you make it. It was the constant back and forth, the constant relationship that we had going on that probably helped us.
And I want to say something about the Rising Winds that I think is part of why they were such a great parent for us. We could vote. Why did those monarchs show up at our events? Because we were voters. And we were a bunch of active, excited voters who got to see each other once a month. Which means if a monarch candidate shows up and makes friends with us, that person's chances of winning King of the Rising Winds just went up. The monarchs came because they loved us, but they loved us because it mattered. And not every kingdom does that. Not every kingdom can do that. But it was a huge part of the support we got from our parent, and part of why the Rising Winds was such a good parent to us.
Okay, thank you. He mentioned that Weez, you might have some more insight into that.
Back when our previous incarnations, when we were under the Iron Mountains, they supported us the best they could, offering advice, conversing with us. Granted, it was such a long distance in the Crown Lands, it was difficult for them to spend some time with us, face to face, to come to events and such like that. So it was really more of a, at that point in time, more of a back and forth, like phone conversations, exchanging emails, just like, what should we do in this situation? You have any advice? So on and so forth, like that. I think I honestly think we benefit a lot more from Rising Winds being our parent kingdom than we had previously with Iron Mountains. But nothing against the Iron Mountains themselves, but it was the fact that mostly our proximity towards the Rising Winds was the actual benefit, and being able to work with them more closely.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is an open question. Anybody can jump in. But since you guys talked about Rising Winds being the parent kingdom, it's been mentioned, I think, at least once here. In another conversation we had with Rising Winds, it was mentioned the timeline or time limit. Let's talk about that a little bit. Was that good or bad?
It was great.
It was great. Well, elaborate.
Amazing. So, when we're socializing this, when we're trying to build the excitement that Broton talked about, everybody's committed. Doesn't matter who's in what clique. We're all in this together. The timeline's a big part of that. Because nobody plays the game of, well, we can always put it off and fix this little problem. Because you can't put it off. You got to play through this little problem because we're on the clock. And we're trying to make a plan. Nobody could say, well, this plan isn't good enough. Let's take another year to make a better plan. The answer is, we got to refine this plan on the go because we're on a clock. And don't get me wrong, our people love the Rising Winds. The Rising Winds was very good to us. But there was nobody in Polaris who wanted to go back to just being Parks in the Rising Winds. Nobody.
Anybody else?
Oh, I personally liked it because as it was brought up, me and Weezicus were in the Principality under the Iron Mountains, and it was super lax, which when I started, that sounded really great to me, but then it's like I saw like Rivermore, which they made Kingdom, good on them, love those guys, but it took them a long time, and when we were the Principality of Olympus, it was always like, yeah, we'll get it, but then finally when there was an actual time limit, that's when this became real. This is when we sat down, it's like, this is our hobby, but it's time to go to the next step, and everyone agreed. So we put aside all like little petty stuff that different groups would have, and we all just, instead of individuals, we were Polaris. By having that clock, we became one.
And I think Broton hit on a key point when he mentioned Rivermore. Rivermore had the numbers and the organization to theoretically get it about 10 years ago. And it took them 10 years. And that's no disrespect to Rivermore. They had what they had, and they just pushed through. But we didn't have 10 years. And we had 3 years. We got it done in 3 years because we had to.
Do you guys feel like that was a positive pressure?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think also because we had spent all that time under the Iron Mountains, that we already had the Principality mentality. We just needed the extra push. That once they came down, all right, guys, 3 years, let's do it. We were already set for that already. I think if we didn't have that mentality previously, I think it would have been a lot more difficult, but still doable. The time limit is a great idea, but it may or may not work for everybody. In 3 years, I had a conversation about this earlier today. The 3 years might not work for any other principality. So, but having the time limit, just a deadline, improves it.
Sort of forces you to run the race.
Exactly.
No, I disagree. I think we had the parks, but we weren't organized. We weren't, as Broton said, Polaris. We were Miss the Dawn and Crimson Circle or Frostlands. I think 2 years ago when we had the pressure of 3 years, we came together as Polaris, and that was because of the timeline, not against it.
Okay. All right, thanks. Let's talk about some administrative organizational stuff, right? Because that's always behind the scenes in building a kingdom, and it's pretty important to getting your organization together, right? So first, how and when did you guys build your corpora, and what did you learn through that process?
You can't please everybody.
So ironically, I think none of the four of us were on the first corpora committee.
Okay.
Our very first prince under the Rising Winds. No, I lied. Our first prince pre-Rising Winds appointed a corpora committee by getting people from each park. And he made an okay committee, and they worked hard, and they reviewed the IM Kapora and the RW Kapora and melded it together into one thing. We're already in negotiation with the RW then. When he stepped down, the next prince stepped up under the RW. And the Kapora committee worked through that prince's term too. They delivered to the populace a Kapora that we voted on, that in my opinion, too few voters reviewed, because we had a document that was basically unusable. There was a lot of good stuff in it, but it was not ready to run a kingdom with. And as the third prince of Polaris, I told my GMR, we have a document that's unusable. Your job is not to change the concepts. We had a committee come up with these concepts. Your job is to turn this into a usable document. And at the end of it, we'll ratify it. And that guy, I'll give him credit. He was an 18-year-old kid, 17 or 18 years old. And he sat down and he freaking did that. And he gave us a document that while the Polaris Kapora we use today will make changes, most kingdoms do. There's things that need to be worked on in it. It's usable. And I give that kid, his name is Hamlet, I give him a lot of credit for fixing it. And I think after he fixed it, our voters didn't read it a whole lot more, but at least we didn't have giant holes that we couldn't govern through.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your officer structure. How do you guys organize your officers? I'm assuming that fundamentally at the park level, everything's the same, right? But you guys have a number of parks. You have your principality or kingdom leaders, right? How do you coordinate them all? How do you organize them?
So every election, most elections that I can remember while I was here, have been contested. We are a ticket-based system, something that we got from our IM days, where a monarch and a regent run together. It's not separate. And that's based on the fact that you want people that can work together. For good or bad, that's just how it's been done. And we've always had contestants, and we had 8 monarchs under the Rising Winds Polaris, and we never had a repeat for monarchs. Every ticket's been different. And one good thing I also like is everything except for every single park except for our 2 new shires had a kingdom officer at some point or another. It's very diverse. We're pretty open for anything, and everybody gets along.
And you get elected by coalition building. So often these tickets come from multiple parks because that's how they get elected. If you take 2 guys from your park, you get a lot of votes from your park, but you don't get any votes from any other park. And yes, you can go earn those votes, but you're starting behind the curve. So we've had a lot of people run on tickets on opposite sides of the kingdom because that's how they win.
So, so you guys had 8 parks?
We have 10 now.
10 now, but during the bid year, how many did you have? 9?
9.
Does that include the umbrella officers?
No, they're separate offices.
So you had a total of 10 monarchs.
Correct.
And none of them ran twice.
None of the kingdom officers ran twice.
Okay.
Some of the park officers probably did.
And
Okay.
that was in the span of Polaris. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you've got 10 monarchs and all of their officers, and you've got 1 year to try and coordinate all of these activities across the principality. How do you coordinate that many leaders?
So the board of directors wrote the plan and took the bids for the eight Goodyear events. So the princes who stepped up, they couldn't change that stuff. That was already there. And yes, it hurts to have a prince who is usually a monarch with great power in Amtgard not even be able to decide that stuff. But we had to plan it too far in advance. On the other hand, our princes did do a lot of great stuff. For example, we had a superhero themed reign, and the prince who ran that reign had a whole performance that was like the court acting out in front of everybody else this superhero story about a concerned citizen who got killed because he got caught in the battle between Batman and Joker. And this whole thing played out, and the reign was so much stronger because we got together 6 times. He has more to work with, even though he had no control over those events, except to squeeze his little pieces in here and there. And the other 2 monarchs during the good year did the same things to a lesser extent. I mean, he's the guy who's lucky and had 6 good year events all packed in the middle. He also had the winter, but because the winter didn't bite us in the ass, it was pretty much all good. But the fact that these guys didn't have a lot of control over the good year events meant that the coordination was less.
Yeah, it's just, it came down to planning. It's of the first event of our good year. Every monarch who was in office or who was going to be in office knew exactly which dates, what's happening. We had this planned out, laid out for everyone to see. So it's every monarch was on board because once again, everyone was on the same page. It wasn't no surprises throughout that whole year. You knew what was going to happen.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have a couple of questions here from our audience. So you guys mentioned how important it is to make a plan, and that you spoke about Rising Winds coming to visit a lot. How much was Rising Winds involved in the formation of those plans or the execution of those plans?
Not much.
All right.
Yep, they gave us free reign.
Yeah.
Okay.
They allowed us. A few of our monarchs went to them seeking higher level awards. We were capped at 8.
Okay.
With consent, we can give 9, and we did that a few times. There were 3 knights under Rising Wind. Rising Winds made 3 people in Polaris knights. Myself, Awindala, and Sir Raphael as 4th belt. They worked with us, but they didn't do anything. They wanted us to do stuff on our own.
Yeah, it was basically a pass or fail. It's like I remember coming out here my second time, and I was just talking to a few people, and they're just like, "Well, I'm pretty sure you guys got this, but if you don't, we'll like to have you as single parks again." And that was my motivator the whole time. We're adults. We should be able to handle this because they weren't going to come and pick up our problems.
And I'll be honest, they did have high faith in us. Yeah, they didn't do much, not because they didn't love us, but because you guys are going to be a kingdom. You should be able to solve this stuff.
I think one of the key factors was that back when we were under Iron Mountains, we were still, while we were a principality, we were expected to operate under the Iron Mountains Kapora. Once we were under the Rising Winds, they had it set up that the principalities ran under their Kapora while still observing certain tenets of the Rising Winds Kapora. So they let us, like, you need to, learn how to be a kingdom. You have to learn to operate under your own Kapora. So, here you go. But just remember, we're still right here, going to keep an eye on you guys. So letting us experience it and try to figure out our own situation, what we needed to do, I think helped out tremendously.
Okay. Give you guys a lot of independence. Okay. Here's something I'm honestly curious about. So the Circle of Monarchs and the I guess the XCOM are very involved in the formation of kingdoms, right? Like that's sort of a big part of their job. How much interaction did you have with those bodies?
We cheated.
We cheated.
I was the chairman of the XCOM when we started this process, and I did it for 6 years, meaning that we had an in that no other principality had. I knew what good bids looked like. I knew what was required. I took that information home to my principality. When we're making the plan, we knew what Northern Lights had done. We knew what all these other kingdoms had done. We're like, this worked. We copy that. This didn't work so well. We don't copy that. And it's hard. But I tell every principality that's seriously interested, go to clan. Sit through that meeting. It's freaking interminable some days, but you learn so much.
Okay. Anybody else got anything for that? Let's see.
I will add that I had been going to Clan for a few years up to this point, and I was able to see Rivermore pre-bid and then bid the year before. And not only they passed their bid packets out. If any Principality wanting to go for Kingdom, go to those things. They will give you the extra copies, and you can see what they did for their bid package. And I'm just using Ginger because he presented it. I don't know if he made that packet or what, but he walked me through it and showed good points and bad points for setup and easy reading. And when I was making our bid packet for Clan for pre-bid and an actual bid, I use Rivermore's as a guideline.
And Talagore is online, and I think Northern Lights is online. So there are other bid packs to study.
Sure. Good. Okay, so you got your good year. You've planned it out. You've executed a ton of events. You've got your numbers. You've got your hype. You show up to Clan. You've got your bid in your hand. Now you got to present it. How do you go about doing that?
I got a few things to add, but
I was in a hospital bed. Y'all better answer this one.
so it's not just showing up to Clan, and this is something that I really admire for for y'all. The last group coming up is we had name brand recognition. Polaris at this point was a household symbol. 3 years ago at Clan, we made tabards that said "Vote Polaris 2016." We went to Clan and we took every single Monarch and high-profile figures, put our tabards on them, took pictures, and went everywhere. The last 2 years at Keep, we had every single server for main feast wear a Polaris tabard and go here and serve it in a kind of better than average Ordell for an Amtgard event. Last year at Clan, we went through and we pretty much donated from our group and did the Buy My Vote breakfast at Clan. Just real gaudy, everything out there kind of breakfast. It went over really well. Everybody at Clan knew who we were. That's name brand recognition went a long way. It wasn't if players came in Kingdom, it's like just hurry up and get the stupid vote over. You've already put your time in.
Well, and I have to throw Queball under the bus a little bit. All those tabards the servers wore, the kings wore, all the banners. That's him and his sewing machine.
But I mean, Rivermore did the same thing. Y'all are doing the same thing. I've seen y'all for years, so that works.
So branding is important.
Branding, name brand
Yes.
is important.
Okay.
And also it helped as soon as we got to Clan this year, we set up almost right in the middle of the whole site, had a big party every night, made sure everyone saw us, talked to everyone.
I remember my cabin was right next to it.
Well, then you know we had a great time.
So do you feel then that the work is pretty much done by the time you're standing in front of the Monarchs, that the presentation itself may not be as important as all the work leading up to it?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
As long as you don't show up and put your foot in your mouth, that's basically it.
So I don't know how they're changing it, but our bid was passed to be voted on. We sent it in January, and by March they're like the then Burning Lands. I don't know how it's changing hands, but once it passes that, it's a decent setup, and you know how it's going to go. Other than that, it's just mingle with them. They want to know that we're not going to be our own little separate entity and do our own thing. We felt that we were already on an inter-kingdom status. We do travel quite a bit. We're not just stuck in our own little area.
Okay. So we talked a little bit earlier about the levels of burnout, the high level of activity that you have during that pre-bid year, right? How do you move forward? Like, you become a kingdom, and everybody like just takes a deep breath. Does it just plateau? Does it die? Do you find a way to keep the energy high? What do you do at that point?
I personally think we solved that with GAC. We had the biggest party that our kingdom has had from even Principality. It's just we invited all our friends, we invited their friends, and had a great time.
And I'll tell you another thing that Polaris is still pretty invested in. And this is not a shot at any other kingdom. There's lots of good kingdoms out there. We believe we can do it better. And it sort of doesn't matter what it is. like, we believe we can run better events. And part of one of the things that we did well that I think we'll continue to build on has to do with a part of the game that isn't my favorite. But Polaris took as one of its permanent events, its big four events, going forward forever, Great Adventurers Challenge, which has always been at least halfway roleplay based. And then we have a second event that's also roleplay based. So we're running 2 of our 4 events that are as much roleplay as battle game. Now, I'm not saying that's the right recipe for everybody, but that's the right recipe for our Principality. And even those of us who are a little bit further toward the stick jock side, I know what my people like. And I'm going to do those things better because that's what's going to make them happier. And we're going to look at the things about the Rising Winds we like its egalitarianism, like its wide voting rights. We're going to copy that stuff. We're going to look at its things that we don't like its lack of seriousness in courts, its goofy shit, it's fly by the seat of your pants, and we're going to say, we can get a better match for us. We can do better. And I'll tell you what, I know the current monarch. He was a prince already. Now he's our first king. He's trying to do better than he did as prince. That's a high bar to hit. I guarantee you that our next kings are already thinking, how can they do better? Amtgard has competition. We're good at it. Polaris is using it.
All right. So we're coming to the point here where we're going to start looking at wrapping things up a little bit. So I would like it if each of you could take a moment and, if you had the monarch of a principality who is planning on bidding or is in their bid year, what piece of advice would you give them if you only had a few minutes to do that? Weezicus, you want to go and start?
Anybody want to start on the other?
You want to pass? Broton, I can start with you.
Sure. What advice I would give to a monarch who's about to do the push? Get support. Get everyone on the same page. It doesn't really matter what, as long as you all have the same understanding. This is the goal at the end. Just remind them of that goal. Find the craftiest people in your principality. When we more or less started, we had Lily Sunshine as our prince, and he was doing comic books. He asked people to make comic book garb in that, but not a lot of people were doing it. It just took a few people, a company, but they all started doing that. Then more people did it. Then everyone got more on board, and that just pushed it further. And then our last prince, Theo, he just kept the hype so going. Everyone was so positive because he just, whenever someone seemed down, it's just keep going forward. We're almost there, and that's what people need because we're all human. We all burn out, and it's easier to look on the negative side of it. It's like I've been out 8 times. I don't need to go out the other time, but it's just having someone there that everyone can recognize who's going to be pushing for this. That's what's important. And that's why I thought.
So I'm assuming you're going to talk about the raffle and the belt favors.
No, I will if you don't.
I have 2, and I'll do make it like change things up. Don't do the same exact. We're showing up this field park Saturday. We're going to have 2 battle games versus 2 teams versus each other. We're going to throw some food together and then send them away. Every single one of our 12 events were completely different. We had one event was just a lock-in. We had a lot of board games and whatnot. We got together, sword fighting. We had our competition outside, A&S competition on the inside. Stayed up all night playing nerd games and drinking. One of our competitions was an avatar. Everybody picked one of their teams for the 4. I'm not really familiar with it. But, I mean, the hype on that was crazy. One of them was just straight up goblins. Every single one of them was different, and the hype was different. And then always incentives. Incentives are always nice. I personally, my buddy Megiddo has a laser engraver. I gave everybody that made all 12 of them I made them a nice big leather belt favor. But other than that, we set up raffles that every time you came, you got your name in a hat. And at the end of it, we had some really, really good prizes. Some of our best crafters in Polaris put their time in and gave out gifts based on that. And, you know, incentives are always good.
Michael?
So the other thing I wanna say, Broton's right. Buy-in is essential, but part of why this planning is so important, you want to make the buy-in easy. Make the travel short. Make the cost low. Make the events exciting, because that makes the buy-in easy. Once people are bought in, it carries itself. But you want to make that initial buy-in as easy as possible. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a hint for the Winner's Edge people, for you. Kingdoms and principalities already know they got to travel for things like Qualls, things like Weapon Master. Those are actually not great choices for Goodyear events, because who goes to Weapon Master? Fighters. Are there enough of them to get you to 75? For us, I wasn't sure. In fact, I was pretty sure there wasn't. So we had a Qualls that wasn't a Goodyear event, that was so attended, where we're electing our prince to run for 6 months. But the fact was, we were better off doing a more exciting event with games everybody would play, and having the people who really wanted to run for office and really cared show up at Qualls. Weapon Master, Dragon Master. We tied it into the lock-in, so there's a buy-in for everybody. People who don't want to enter an ANS, who don't want to fight in Weapon Master, they can still come hang out in a hotel, play board games, drink and tell lies, all that stuff. Make these things cooler, because it's easy to do Dragon Master, Weapon Master. You become a kingdom, you're going to be doing Dragon Master, Weapon Master every 6 months, forever. How exciting can you make that? I don't think you can make it exciting enough, and we didn't try.
Good. Yeah, you've had a moment. You ready?
Yeah, I am now. I've been playing now for 13 and a half years, and I can finally say that it feels amazing to finally be a part of a kingdom. Patience, perseverance, keep up the hype. You gotta hold each other up. You know, there'll be times when it's just like, I can't do it anymore, it's not gonna work. Look, I'll get your gas. Hop in with me, we'll go, we'll have a great time, it'll be good, I'll buy you a beer afterwards. You gotta be there for each other, and you gotta make sure that, you know, you get through it. Because once you get your kingdom status, the work's not over. Now you have to worry about maintaining it and keeping it going. You get maybe a time to take another deep breath, and then you go back at it again. So just hold each other up, keep it up, patience, perseverance, and just go. Just go.
All right. Well, I think those are some awesome points, and this has been a really great conversation with some good, really good information in it. So if I get a round of applause for our fantastic panel here. And another round of applause for all of the volunteers that helped to make this happen. I'd like to thank all of you for your time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the event.